right, it is 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Council, tonight we've got a new just reminder to ensure clear audio during meetings. Council members should keep their microphones on at all times, please, and speak directly into the microphone. Again, this is for the benefit of the tens and tens of people that are watching us at home so that they can hear back clearly. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Pershman.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, is anybody here this evening for community comment? All right, we have no presentations and reports, but we do have a public hearing. So I will make the motion to open the public hearing. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
A motion by Mayor Johnson, second by Councilmember Pershman. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, I don't know who's starting. Ms. Smith, Ms. Omdal?
Nope, I'm starting. I'm gonna hope that my screens are or the screen will pop up. There it is. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we have a public hearing related to United Properties and the 212 West Business Center. So the game plan, I'm gonna give a quick project overview, talk about the times you've seen this project, some project details, and then Jess Green with Northland is here to talk about TIF authority, the developer request, and then we'll have the public hearing. So the project that we're talking about is located at the corner of Jonathan Carver Parkway or County Road 11 in Levi Griffin Road. So it's the property here. Was recently annexed into city limits, so it is in the City of Carver. And then on our comprehensive plan in the red circle is the property circled, so you can see it as purple, which is guided for a commercial industrial mix, which this project confirms with their land use applications. So again, corner of JCP, Jonathan Carver Parkway, County Road 11, and Levi Griffin Road. The concept plan that's been reviewed by the council is on the screen now. So it's 2 industrial buildings, both at 189,000 square feet with 550 plus parking stalls. The spaces are meant for leasable spaces, so it'll have high ceilings, space to demise for multiple employers, flexible site layout and parking areas. And when you think about the type of user, we might see there would be production, lab, research and development, warehousing, distributing, etc. Hot off the press, delivered to the city this morning is a rendering that United Properties has provided for the outside of the building. So if you want to take a quick look, I know this is an addition to the packet, so truly your first look
this is great.
in this room. I'll leave this one up for a little bit in a minute. So some project details that are important as we are working through the concept plan, preliminary plat, et cetera. There won't be direct access onto Jonathan Carver Parkway, so the County Road 11 system will be untouched. There will be access from Levi Griffin Road, that shouldn't be Drive, and Commerce Drive. This project specifically triggers the need for a signal at Levi Griffin Road and Commerce Drive, so thinking about that intersection between Lakeview and this next project, there will be a signal at that location. TIF funds will not be used for that portion of the project. Okay, will be used, sorry. And then there's also the Levi Griffin deferred assessment. So when Levi Griffin was constructed for the Fleet Farm project, portions along that road were deferred the amount that the road cost to construct. So this project specifically is carrying about a $775,000 deferred assessment that will be realized by the city when this project develops. So planning steps that have been completed, it's hard to believe that you saw this concept plan almost a year ago in August. The City Council reviewed concept plan. January 6, 2025, the City Council reviewed annexation application, went on to the state, was approved by the state, so now in city limits. March 3rd, the City Council reviewed the environmental assessment worksheet. So this project, due to its size, required some extensive environmental review. So that was a review by the City Council. And then the Planning Commission was asked to review the TIF application to confirm conformance with the comprehensive plan. So they did that at their June 26th meeting just a couple weeks ago. So at this point, the project is in for preliminary plat, rezoning, and final plat applications, anticipated to be before council later this summer, early fall for those additional applications. So again, I just gave the really quick project overview. Jess is here to give the overview of the TIF authority and developer request, and then we'll do the public hearing, but I'm going to let you look at it one more time as Jess comes up to join us.
I'm sorry for calling you Tammy.
Oh, it's fine. It happens all the time.
And it's a high compliment.
I agree. Absolutely. All right. Mayor, council, good evening.
Good evening.
So in addition to the information that Erin just went over, there are a number of materials, as you probably noticed, in your packet this evening. So in an effort to sort of condense things a little bit, otherwise we'd be here for hours if we went here page by page, we've prepared a relatively brief presentation for you. We're going to talk a little bit about sort of an overview of TIF, not really a TIF 101, but kind of just giving some broad strokes to the TIF authority, and then we'll go over a little bit about the actual request that's before the city council. I am happy to dive into any of the materials that are in your packet. Should you want to do that, just let me know. But if it's okay with council, we'll just dive in here. Sound good? Great. Okay, so TIF overview here. So the TIF law is specifically in Minnesota Statutes 469. It is 174 through 179.4. It's rather complex, and it has changed a number of times over the years. I wouldn't say that we have lots and lots of changes, but it has changed over the years, and it continues to change, and that adds to the complexity of the TIF law. The TIF law itself gives power to establish TIF districts to authorities, and those authorities may be cities, they may be EDAs, HRAs, port authorities. Less often we see them with counties, but counties are also able to establish TIF districts. 1 second, Erin, sorry. So when an authority is acting with its municipal powers, that those powers need to be sort of provided for within a municipal development district. So the terminology related to TIF gets a little bit clunky. If you read through that TIF plan, you probably saw reference to the municipal development district and also the tax increment financing district. So something to sort of just kind of keep those things separate is that the development district is really meant to be sort of an envelope in which TIF districts are established. So when we talk about the development district, that's what we're referring to, and we'll show a map a little bit later on. But the development district itself for Carver is coterminous with the boundaries of the city. And then, of course, the TIF district itself is related to a single parcel. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. There are different types of TIF districts. For our discussion tonight, we're going to be talking about economic development TIF districts. There are certainly housing districts, redevelopment districts, et cetera. And the type of district that you utilize is dependent upon the project details. And that's what sort of qualifies it for that particular type of district. Each district is going to have a different type of process. So there's different rules, which again adds to the complexity of everything. But no matter what, any type of district is going to require some ongoing monitoring and reporting that is necessary to the state. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about economic development TIF today. So what is TIF? Generally speaking, it is a development tool that is available, of course, to Minnesota cities and other authorities. Restated here, simple in concept, but complex in application. So at its core, it is the capture of taxes that come from development. So that's why we say it's rather simple in concept, but all of the process and everything else that goes along with it, it makes it somewhat complex. That being said, property taxes, of course, created by the development are captured and then used to finance activities to encourage development or redevelopment. And before you can create a district, a city is required to hold a public hearing related to the creation. Now, the city needs to find that in its opinion that the project would not move forward but for the assistance to the project. So, and sort of a distinction here, it doesn't mean that you believe that no development would occur. It's just this particular project in its concept, in its scope, would not move forward without the assistance. So again, property taxes that are attributed to the increase in the property value is what captures the taxes that are attributable to that, So in practice, the base value that exists today and the property taxes that come from that, those continue to be received by the city, the school district, the county, the state, so all of the individual taxing jurisdictions. However, it's that, again, that increase in the property value and those taxes that are captured for TIF. After that capture ends, that tax capacity is then enjoyed by the city as all the other properties on the tax rolls. So the type of TIF assistance here that is being contemplated is considered a pay-as-you-go assistance, or we often refer to it as pay-go. There are other types of assistance, such as the issuance of tax increment bonds. Those are general obligation pledge. You can do interfund loans, things like that. But pay-go assistance is what we see most often. There was a time when TIF bonds were issued quite often, but starting in about 2007 or so, that died down quite a bit. But what this means is that the project costs are financed by the developer, so they're not seeking any upfront assistance from the city. And then the developer is reimbursed semi-annually as they pay their taxes on the property. So again, that increment is captured, and then they are reimbursed as the tax settlements come in from the county. And then the TIF revenue note, bless you, is issued to the developer and payable solely from the pledge TIF revenue. So there is no general obligation pledge here. And that's important to note, being that if the developer, for some reason, doesn't pay their taxes for that particular 6 months, then no increment is created. And there is no pledge from the city other than that increment. So it creates sort of more of a risk position for the developer, again, because they're financing all of those project costs up front. In terms of the TIF assistance itself, so the city would agree to a specified amount of TIF to reimburse the developer for certain project costs up to a specified amount. And those tax increment revenues available to the developer or the city, depending on who's sort of leading the project, is defined within the development agreement. That's another one of those documents that you have in your packet this evening. I do want to mention one just correction, as Erin was talking and said that the TIF is not going to be used to reimburse the signal. Erin is correct. So we're reimbursing for other improvements within the district because the signal is actually outside of the boundaries of the district. So that's why when we say certain project costs, just a clarification there. So again, while the TIF isn't being used specifically for the signal, there are other sort of project eligible costs that could be covered with TIF. So it's a little bit of a shift in how that's covered, but just to be clear about those certain project costs. So the city does need to require the developer to certify the actual amount of the costs that they've incurred. And this is important because if, and I'm going to use round numbers that have nothing to do with this request, but if, let's say, a developer tells you that they're seeking reimbursement for land acquisition, and they say it's $5 million. If they only spend $2 million, you're not going to reimburse for $5. So again, you need to have some documentation related to the actual project costs that are going to be reimbursed from TIF, and whether that's lien waivers or canceled checks. The city does receive those, and once the city is satisfied that those costs have been incurred, then the city would be in a position to issue that TIF revenue note to the developer, again, solely on the pledged revenue from the increment. Any questions, generally speaking? I know I'm kind of rushing through the TIF authority, but are there any questions about TIF in general before we move on to the developer request?
Any questions?
No.
Okay, ready for the quiz at the end.
Mayor, would you just mind just clarifying for the council, because the developer is paying for the signal?
They are, yes.
Okay.
So it's a cost of the total construction package, the total scope of the project, and because of the development and triggering the need for that signal. However, because the signal lies outside of the boundaries of the TIF district, the developer is still going to incur those costs, but we can't use increment to support a project cost outside of the district. So instead, we're going to support other eligible costs that are located within the district. You're both right. Okay, so the city has received an application from United Properties, and Erin just went over all of this information, but just as a quick refresh, 389,000 total square feet are planned for the 212 West Business Center. In terms of use, and this is why it's eligible for a economic development tax increment financing district. The use here is warehousing, production, manufacturing, and then some related office space for those uses. The project is proposed to be constructed in 2 phases. And again, we're here tonight to hold the public hearing if the council, of course, wants to move ahead with the establishment of the district.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah,
If
of
they
course.
use it for another use that's not outlined in here? What does that do?
Yeah, so there are certain types of uses that make it eligible for economic development. So let's say that they switched tracks and they want to do housing. That wouldn't work. Or if they sort of switched it up and they want to do retail in that location. Obviously, there's other sort of land use implications to sort of changing that, but that also wouldn't work. A retail space wouldn't work for economic development. It's really manufacturing, sort of light industrial, warehousing and distribution. There's certain sort of research facilities that would qualify, but everything that they're planning here currently does qualify. If that were to change, and those types of uses are also built into that development agreement, so if that were to change, then we'd have to reevaluate the request to make sure that it fits. And then, of course, with the change in use, we'd also want to do some evaluation of, does the financing make sense?
Okay,
So, yep.
thank you.
Yep, number of safeguards in place. We do have some updated construction dates. So this was prepared about a week and a half ago. So we just got some new dates just late last week. So I'm going to go to my dates here. So phase 1 is proposed to commence no later than September 30th of 2026, and then be completed within the year, so September 30th of 27. And then phase 2 would begin no later than September 30th of 27 and be completed by September 30th of 28. And that's to allow the developer some additional flexibility to get the property closed and get all of the arrangements for the project. Okay, so here's the boundaries of the TIF district and also the development district. So the sort of red and black dashed line that goes around sort of the majority here, that is the see, I'm even going to get the terminology mixed up here. That is the municipal development district number 1, and that is coterminous with the boundaries of the city. Up in the left corner, that sort of yellowy green, that's the actual location of the district itself. So again, within the development district lies the TIF district. So this is to give you a bit of a snapshot on how we approach our analysis when we're looking at TIF requests. So one we're looking at, is TIF assistance necessary? Because that's going to be, again, trying to help the city determine whether the but-for test is met. And then once we get to a yes for that, then we're looking at, if so, how much assistance is needed for the project to move ahead. Now, our objectives when we're going through this analysis is, 1, to provide the minimum amount of assistance that keeps the project in its scope moving forward, so that we're not sort of taking out, various attributes of the project itself, but getting the project across the finish line. We also want to mitigate any city risk. So again, we're not proposing that the city issue general obligation bonds. This is pay-go assistance, which puts the sort of risk position on the developer. And then finally, we want to return the property to the general tax capacity so that you can enjoy the benefits of having that increased property value here in the city. So based on Northland's analysis, we are recommending that the city consider a maximum TIF note to the developer over a 9-year term. That is the maximum duration of an economic development TIF district, on a present value basis at $2,376,471. That is discounted based on a 7% rate. That is the cost of money for the developer as they're constructing the project. Tax increment is received semi-annually, so just as folks pay their taxes and you get that distribution from the county, that's when your increment distribution would occur as well. And the development agreement that's in your packet this evening lays out some of the terms here. So the TIF assistance to United Properties, would be payable solely from 90% of the tax increment. The remaining 10% would be held back by the city to cover administrative costs, and that covers staff time for administering the district, those reporting costs. There are some publication requirements that go along with reporting for TIF. So that 10% holdback would cover that. Any amounts that aren't used for administrative dollars can be returned to the county as excess increment, and that's redistributed based on the individual jurisdiction's tax rates. So that can come back to the city as excess increment. The city would make payments to United Properties on a pay-as-you-go basis, and again, taxes collected from the development property, just that new value that's created. And the principal amount of that TIF revenue note is suggested to be that $2,376,471. 471, and in no case we would anticipate going beyond that. And that assumes that both phases of the project are completed. Now, if for some reason phase 2 does not move ahead, then that amount would be reduced accordingly. So that's built into that development agreement. And then finally, the unpaid principal amount of the TIF note would bear interest, simple non-compounding interest at 7%. And again, that's tied to the cost of money for the developer. And here we have just sort of a breakdown of the total increment that we would anticipate receiving from the county, and then broken down into what the city is retaining with their 10%, excuse me, and what the developer would be receiving. Now, this is based on future value, so this isn't discounted to present value here. So in total, we are estimating that approximately $3.967 million in tax increment would be received from the county, with 90% of that going to the developer, 10% withheld by the city. And then in terms of the use of increment and the reimbursement of project costs, currently we're looking at the land and building acquisition approximately $1,276,471, and then site improvements and preparation costs of $1,100,000. That leaves $295,450 for the city's administrative costs. And again, I don't believe that the city will need that for your administrative costs. Usually that runs you a few $1,000s a year to administer the district and do the reporting. So I have a feeling you'll be returning some excess increment and receiving the benefit of that as that's redistributed. And finally, it's Northland's opinion that the proposed project would not reasonably be expected to occur through private investment within the reasonably foreseeable future, given the extraordinary costs of the development. Now, again, this is to say, or I should say, it's not to say that no development would occur here if the council decides not to move ahead with this project. It's simply that it is our finding that the project as proposed is unlikely to move ahead without assistance. Some key dates with any sort of TIF district, and depending on the type of district, different notice requirements are necessary. But we did distribute notification of the hearing to both the county and the school district. They also received a copy of the TIF plan. They were invited to provide us any comments. I'll pause to see if staff received any. Northland has not.
We have not either.
Okay. And then you just mentioned this. The Planning Commission was actually on June 26th. So they've reviewed that draft TIF plan and passed a resolution with the finding for conformity of the plan with the general development plans of the city. We've also published the hearing notice in the newspaper of tonight's public hearing, and then we are here tonight for the hearing and for the council to contemplate whether or not you want to pass the resolution to establish the district. You also have a development agreement for your consideration as well.
All right. Any questions? Let's open it up to public questions. Are there any public comments? This is kind of a speak now or forever hold your peace. All public comments, after all public comments are received, if there are any, the public hearing will be closed and no further comments on this issue will be received at this meeting. All right, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close.
Motion by Councilmember Pershman,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Sayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, any comments or questions from the council?
No, I think we knew that we were headed this direction. This is part of the process, so it's not a surprise. And I'm only saying that because for the tens of viewers that we have, how we could just move along without a lot of deliberation. This is part of the process in any large project like this.
I have one question. The 9 years, for some reason, I was anticipating 10 years. I don't know if it's been a while since I've
Nope.
had to look at a TIF.
And you could be thinking, so with, again, different types of districts, different rules. So economic development TIF districts, you're allowed to collect increment for 8 years from the receipt of the first increment, which allows for 9 years in total. With housing districts, for example, or redevelopment districts, those are allowed to go up to 26 years. So it's 25 years from the receipt of the first increment, so 26 years. However, lots of times cities, when they're contemplating housing or even redevelopment districts, they'll elect to go shorter than that. So it's possible that in the past you've seen districts that could go longer and they've gone for 10, just based on the amount of assistance that's necessary.
Right. Thank you for explaining that.
Sure.
Any other questions on here? Kayla?
I'm not anticipating this happening, but what happens if we get to the end of 9 years and there's money still left in the TIF account? Does that get redistributed to the county and the city?
It does.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm going through my questions. Thanks for anticipating a lot of them
Sure.
and answering them already. My only question is you talked about, and it's maybe piggybacking off of Lori's, but if they start construction next September of 2026,
Yep.
when does kind of that clock start
Sure.
running? When is the first?
Yeah, so it starts from the receipt of first increment. And unlike housing and redevelopment districts, with economic development districts, you cannot elect to delay the receipt of increment.
Okay.
So if the developer chooses, or for whatever reason, that the project is delayed, anything built in 25 will be recognized by the county in 26 for taxes payable 27. So let's say that they delay and they don't start until 26. That could mean that we do receive increment in 27 if there's a difference in the property value, if that increases. Because when you certify it, they certify the original net tax capacity of the property. Now, if there's no change in the value and it's just the land that exists today, and they don't actually start construction until 26, then I would anticipate that they're actually not going to receive increment until 28 because of that delay and the lag of when things are sort of recognized for the tax rolls. So there is some implication to delaying the project, and it all depends on the timing of when that first increment is received, and that starts the clock.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If there aren't any other questions, I would entertain a motion.
Okay. I'll make a motion to
We're all
adopt,
sitting back, somebody else here.
adopt Resolution 119-25 approving the modification to the development program for Municipal Development District Number 1, establishing tax increment financing District Number 1-11 within Development District 1, adopting the tax increment financing plan, therefore, establishing an interfund loan and approving a business subsidy.
Motion. Motion by Councilmember Pershman.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
And then I'll make a motion to approve the tax increment financing development agreement between the City of Carver and United Properties Development LLC.
Motion by Councilmember Pershman.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Sayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Got a new TIF agreement. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Mock.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Pasco. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, moving on to business items. We have the Great River Energy Lake Town Transmission Line Project. Ms. Smith and Michael Swenson.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, there they are.
How did it change? I just unplugged once. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to give a quick overview of where we're at, and then we have some guests joining us for the conversation too. So the City Council reviewed the Great River Energy. Again, I'm going to try to not say Great River Greening. I apologize if I do. At your May 19th meeting. Some information about the project is that the line will run through Laketown and Dahlgren Township. And the things that are important is that the transmission lines will be on 70 to 95-foot poles. And the most impactful piece to that, I think, is the 100-foot right-of-way that will be required under the line. So really impactful for development in the area, limiting the amount of development that could happen with structures, trees, and vegetation. So some information about how it relates to the city of Carver. You can see in the yellow dash outline, that's our future growth area in our 2040 comprehensive plan. And you can see the call out there with Great River Energy's preferred route at this point. So after the May 19th meeting, the city council, I think, if not all, most of you attended a public hearing to provide some commentary, feedback about the project. But as we know, those typically are sessions where they hear what you're saying, but there's not an opportunity for dialogue. So we invited members of Great River Energy and MVEC to join us at this meeting to give some additional context, engage in some feedback and discussion with the city council. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you.
Welcome, if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Mike Swenson. I'm a transmission permitting specialist with Great River Energy.
And Joe Green, Minnesota Valley Electric Co-op, Community Relations, and I also work with our key accounts on the commercial industrial side.
Yeah, we didn't prepare a formal presentation. We just thought we'd show up, and based on the feedback we got during the public hearings, it seemed like you guys had some more questions about the project. So we wanted to make ourselves available to answer questions about the project or the PUC process questions.
I thought you guys were going to have a little bit of a presentation for the emails that we sent. But, okay, questions for the group?
I'm going to start off with a
Go ahead.
very pointed question. So when we've made it very apparent and very clear that we were not notified of this ahead of time, and that we found out in kind of a roundabout way that this transmission line was being proposed to come through what will be the eventual city of Carver. When I'm looking at the map here, well, I'll back up a little bit. So when we're talking here, it says Carver County, City of Victoria. Those two entities and municipalities were, and municipality were notified, and discussions were had with that group. City of Carver had no notification, no discussions on where this line was supposed to be. And when I'm looking at this, it talks about Dahlgren Township. When I'm looking at the map up here, it doesn't look like where the initial proposed line was going along 10. That is also still township. What township is that in?
Laketown.
That's Lake Town? All right, so in order to talk to the City of Victoria, you had to go through Lake Town Township because City of Victoria has not annexed that in yet. So then to move the line into our area, we have Dahlgren Township and then City of Carver. So I'm wondering how this disconnect came in from talking to Lake Town Township to City of Victoria, Carver County, and then a line that comes through the Dahlgren Township, which is also another township, no different than the one above it, but didn't make its way to City of Carver. Can I get some explanation on why that happened?
Yeah, so the three routes other than alternative B were actually developed before we spoke with any of the RGUs in the area. Initially, as part of the routing process, we reach out to the directly impacted RGUs. So in this instance, it was Carver County, Dahlgren Township, and Laketown Township. When we met with Laketown Township in January of 2024, they mentioned the annexation agreement with the City of Victoria. And also during field reviews of these routes in the fall of 2023, we noticed along the XL line, there was like flagging on some of those parcels. So assuming that there's some type of development going on. So once we were notified of the annexation agreement and realizing that there's potential development along one of our proposed routes, we went and spoke with city staff at the City of Victoria, and they let us know about the upcoming development on those parcels. When we met with Dahlgren Township, it wasn't brought up through them that there was an annexation agreement with the City of Carver. And also when we met with the county, they did not bring up the fact that there was an annexation agreement between the City of Carver and Dahlgren Township. So we weren't made aware of it until after we had submitted our route permit application, and then a member of the public, I think, came and talked to staff about the project. And once we were made aware of it during scoping for the EA with PUC, we reached out to staff to discuss the project with them. So that's how that whole thing played out.
Well, I'm sure you can understand our frustration, right? As the City of Carver, as staff, as council members, as mayor, that something that has 100-foot swath of easement is coming through the township, and we have into an orderly annexation agreement area, and we have no idea of it. So I just wanted to start off with that my displeasure that happened and that we weren't part of those discussions early on. I understand that no one's going to say, great, put that in my backyard. I understand that City of Victoria is not going to say, yes, we want that there. Carver County is going to, talk on the side too, but the City of Carver is going to say the exact same thing. No, we don't want that taking up what will someday be, or is destined and is planned to be part of our community. So I will step back on that one for a minute.
Kayla?
Yes, so when reviewing your response to some of the memos that had been sent by city staff, you mentioned that it is common when going along a road that within the state you will have a 55-foot easement along a road rather than a 100-foot easement. And you implied that the 100-foot easement would be no more burdensome upon development than the 55-foot easement following a specific road that already exists. Can you elaborate on what your logic behind the fact that a half-size easement along an already dividing line is equally or more burdensome to the city or to the planning process than a 100-foot easement along for development purposes?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, you're wondering if the 100-foot easement is less burdensome?
I'm asking you to elaborate on the position you put in your letter stating that a 100-foot easement along open land would be equally or less burdensome to development than a 55-foot easement along an existing road.
Well, the line itself is following parcel lines, so that burden of the right-of-way would be on either parcel. That's kind of what we're getting at there. I guess I'm not following.
I understand that, and from your perspective, I understand that. But what our position is and has been is that when developers come into this property, and as we've looked at, especially with housing developments that have gone forward, they don't buy one and develop one parcel of land. They buy and develop parcels of land that they then aggregate. And by putting a 100-foot easement along a property line, yes, right now, that would appear to be less burdensome, but when it comes to development, that becomes a more burdensome situation for developers because they no longer have a undivided parcel of property.
Okay. Throughout the metro, we have, and Xcel Energy has multiple 115 kV lines with 100-foot wide right-of-ways that are going through parcel lines, and in a lot of instances, not following any type of existing right-of-way or parcel line. And development occurs around these lines consistently. It's all across the metro. You can see where development is right up against our right-of-ways, and it does not seem to preclude any type of development. So it's not really seen from our end as a hindrance to development of having our right-of-way through these areas.
The example you used in your letter was Apple Valley and Burnsville. Were those lines specifically following those property lines, not along existing roads at the time that they were constructed?
Those lines were constructed originally probably back in the 60s. So in some instances, yes, in some instances, no. They were following roads in some instances. Yeah.
So you're not aware of any changes that had to be made to their planning or any development because of where those were placed specifically?
I would say I personally don't know. I could go back and talk to the project team on those projects and see if they have any idea of where they might have had to change their and you provided us a copy of your 2040 plan, and we reviewed it against our proposed route. Our conclusion is that that line is compatible with your proposed land uses in that area. And in fact, this project itself would help facilitate the type of development you're looking at and we're talking about earlier in this meeting.
Erin, do you have accessible a copy of the overlay? Okay, so There we go. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at the housing development is specifically what we would be looking at, what we have currently zoned for low or medium density residential, right? And that's where it's going to cut across the property lines. In my experience, which is albeit not as long as some other people on the council, these are not going to be individual parcels of land developed into a single tiny little housing development. What this is going to be is that this entire portion would be purchased by a single developer and then developed into a single residential development. And by cross-cutting this property, you're reducing the development value of this tiny little portion up top. Now, I understand what you're saying about it serving those people. I'm not against this line fundamentally. I think that it's important for our residents, for our commercial development. But the way that it cross-cuts the planned property, you're limiting the development, especially of that northern portion there, because people don't want to buy that small subdivision to do a small subdivision. They want to be able to plan that entire large district that we have mapped out on here. And that's the problem that we have. It's not that it currently follows a property line, it's that it will not follow a property line in the future.
Well, that line cuts down right there and crosses property lines due to existing homes where Holgren and 43 meet, and then when you get up into Augusta. So basically just trying to get from point A to point B, as a whole, we're trying to avoid existing structures. You know, like that small little pie piece, there is a home there. That's why the proposed center line is actually shifted off that property line that cuts out that little triangle piece. Basically to be placing the line away from already existing homes.
So the homes that exist there exist what would be within a 55-foot, even if you moved it to the other side of the road, there's houses that would still be affected by that 55-foot as opposed to 100-foot going through the property line.
No, there's no homes within 55 feet of the proposed center line.
Okay, but if we were to continue following Hampshire Road, are there?
There are more homes when you start getting up towards the intersection, and then once you get to that intersection, trying to get across through Augusta while avoiding that development there in Augusta, the town of Augusta, I guess you could call it. So one way or the other, we'd have to drop back down and go over to the west.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you put anything under this easement? Can you have a road? Can you have a parking lot? Tell me what can go underneath it.
Pretty much, I wouldn't say anything, but you can have parking lots underneath them. Just can have structures or tall growing trees. Things like crab apples, shrubs, they can grow in the easement. Just can't have structures under the easement. So you can have a parking lot. I mean, I can show you pictures in Delano where Culver's just built right next to our line, and their parking lot is right underneath our line.
Okay.
So
So the building, any structure has to be 50 outside the 50 feet, but you can put parking lots, you can put a road through it. Any of those things are possible.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Lori?
I have a question on if you had parking lots, and maybe we can see some examples. Can there be lighting to the parking lot?
Anything not within that 100 feet, you wouldn't be able to have a light pole. So 50 feet on either side of the center line, you wouldn't be able to have a light pole. Generally, if it's tall enough outside that 50 feet to fall and hit the line, it's got to move back a little further, or they got to shorten it.
Okay.
So
That's the only question I have at this time.
Eric?
Yeah, so I think we've established that you were unaware of the annexation agreement, right? So that's pretty well documented. Our response to that was that we asked you to reconsider the proposed alignment. So all of these routes, that was done prior to this knowledge, right?
correct.
Okay, and our response is, we're gonna ask you to reconsider and give us the same level of consideration that you gave Victoria and Carver as you were developing this. My question then is, what have you done? I mean, I get defending the route that you already have in place, you've done all of that work, but in light of what was missed, in light of our development plans, what work has been done to consider an alternative route? Has there been any?
We reviewed the 2040 land use plan, let's shown up here, based on the comments we received from the city, and then our response to the PUC, based on your guys' comments, was we felt that our proposed route was still compatible with your proposed development and land use in this area. So we did not change our proposed route at that time.
So there hasn't been a critical evaluation, kind of a fresh start, well, let's look at this, how we could avoid that.
Well, so the way the PUC process works is us as the applicants have to bring forward a proposed route for the commission to review. So in our application, we included this as our proposed route. Alternatives, the XL alternative and the CASAT 10 alternative were considered as reviewed but rejected alternatives. So they're alternatives we looked at along with several other, there was like 8 other alternatives we reviewed and rejected based on various conditions. Coming into it, our route application included, this is our proposed route, and then it goes to the PUC, and they hold scoping, which they develop their own environmental analysis, which included both those, the CASAT 10 and the XL route, along with an additional alternative that was not included formally in our route permit application. And that analysis has been done by the PUC, by the ERA. So they've reviewed 4 alternatives for this, 4 alternative routes for the project.
Prior to the knowledge that this was part of the annexation agreement.
Afterwards. So the knowledge of the annexation agreement came up during scoping, which is the time when the ERA is developing the scope of the environmental analysis. So the knowledge of the annexation agreement came in during the time when it should have come in, even though we missed it, where the ERA is made aware of it, and that knowledge was brought into their environmental analysis, which they reviewed 4 different alternative routes for the project.
But there wasn't an engagement with the city in the planning of that, as there was with Victoria.
The planning of what?
Planning of the route. So Victoria successfully worked with you to avoid routing through.
We didn't engage in routing with the city of Victoria. These routes that we had in our application were developed before we met with the city of Victoria, before we met with the county. They were presented to the public at a public meeting that we held in January of 2024. So the city of Victoria did not dictate our routes in any way, I would say. All we did is when we approached them, we understood that there was an annexation agreement with them. And we knew from reviewing the routes that there was potential future development in those areas. So we wanted to know what was going on those routes. That's what happened with the city of Victoria.
All right. I'll let you ask any follow-on
Okay.
questions from that.
So I think you're clear that we are pained by the fact that it felt like Victoria got a public meeting 11 months before we were aware of this project. In your own filing, it says the city of Victoria has already planned to host future commercial, industrial, and residential developments. As compared with the route alternatives, the proposed route has the support of the city of Victoria as well as Carver County. And it's a bummer that we didn't get a seat at that table. Getting that off my chest. My questions for you are, can you talk us through, Erin, can you go to the first slide that has all the different options? Can you talk us through, and maybe with a lens of taking the city of Victoria's preferences out of it, why you didn't go with Route A or Route C for your recommendation or for your final?
Yeah. So Route A, I mean, leaving out the fact that the county is going to realign and expand CASAT 10. There are several existing houses along CASAT 10 in that area. And if you notice, the line kind of zigzags, so it crosses the highway in 12 locations to try and avoid existing structures. So minimizing impacts to existing structures is basically the reason why we avoided Route A. Route alternative C, there is a existing switch structure at the intersection of CASAT 10 and CASAT 11. And our interconnection point has to be south of that switch to achieve the reliability that we're going for with this project. So that switch would have to be moved north of the Excel 230 line. So a reconfiguration of some of Excel's line, our line, and that switch. And then just the cross-country nature of that, where it's not following an existing parcel line, parcel to boundary. The fact that we would be placing our poles, basically, we'd have 2 poles for every one of Excel's lattice structures. So you'd be doubling up structures within the middle of the parcels, and the farmers would have to work around them, or in the terms of like potential development, that new right-of-way, so the 230 line's probably got a 150-foot right-of-way. You'd have to add another 70 foot on top of that. So that impact, plus the unknown of what's going on with that realignment when they're trying to remove that curve and regrade through there. That's really why we decided against route alternative C.
Thank you. I've been to the public meeting, I delivered comments, I don't know that I have anything else to add, unless anybody else has anything else.
I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
So you're saying that Route C was less favored because you would be having additional poles in between each of the towers that XL already has there. How is that any different than the number of poles that you would be having on any of the other routes?
It's different in the fact that there's already a 230 lattice structure there. So we would be doubling up. When I say doubling up.
Yeah, but that
the
same number of
pole-
poles, you still need that same number of poles.
I'm saying doubling up in terms of there would be Excel's 230 structures plus our structures on those parcels. So a doubling of 2 transmission lines, 2 sets of structures.
Okay, I guess I'm not seeing how that's more impactful than having the same number of poles on any of the other lines, but thank you for trying to explain it.
When you were talking about the different routes, you mentioned on Route C a curve where is that in County Road 10 that
Our
the idea is to
understand-
have it corrected? Or
Correct. Our understanding in talking with the county is the curve on County 10. I think that's County
I know,
Road 43 when it
which-
comes in. They're going to realign the county highway through that section.
is that right where Erin
Right
is
there,
serving?
yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said something about with the Route A. Did you say leaving out what the plans are for County Road 10, or are you trying to align with the plans?
I said if we were to ignore the County Road 10 plans, even incorporating the County Road 10 plans, there are several existing houses along Casat 10 that do not facilitate, they don't really work well with having a power line going right in front of their house. It'd be really hard to avoid including any other structures in the right of way. So just trying to avoid existing structures along the road is why we don't like alternative A.
Do we know, like, my wish list would be that we would know what the county was gonna do for County Road 10. Have you got, as their community relations, have you gotten any,
We've had several conversations with the county as to what's going on with 10.
but is there anything with timeframes?
Timeframes, I can't speak for the county as to what their timeframe is. My understanding is it could be in the next 5 years, or it could be the next 10 years, could be next year. So timeframe wise, no, I don't believe we really know when they're planning on doing that. I know what we have in our route permit application and the environmental analysis is a proposed alignment for County Road 10. So that's all we have to work with, which includes removing that, realigning it through that corner. So, and then if you look at the alignment for County Road 10, they're obviously going to be impacting a lot of those same houses that we don't want to impact. So as to what that process is going to look like, I can't say. The county has a process they have to go through to figure that out.
And then what is the time, are you on a time crunch, or like, is the demand for this so high, or like, what, is there a rush?
There is a rush from the sense of, getting, for the growth that's coming to the area and for the reliability of getting this new substation tied in with the other substations. Just the meeting that you had tonight with new growth coming here, we've been approached by a number of data centers. That's not factored into this at all. It's just the focus and attention on this. And our goal has been, from a co-op, from a substation standpoint, is we're projecting out what we need with our, this is transmission, with what we need for our distribution and substations, what we need in the near future, 5 years, and it takes 5 years to build a substation. It's taken us 3 years just to get the equipment for the substation. We have that on order, we won't see it till probably 2028. And I've probably done 3 new substations in the last 10 years. And we're projecting out, we're looking at the city's plans, and we're trying to project where that growth is, take into account where roads are. I think that's one of the things that County Road 10, if we were to build along, even with our, not speaking from the transmission side, if we're putting up our poles now, and we know there's going to be a road there, and they're going to change it, and we're going to have to move it again, that could be at our expense as well. We're nonprofit, so we're trying to look ahead to where that's at. But the substations, what we've seen is that if we can get in there before the developers come, that they know it's there, and rather than trying to go in after the fact, it's helpful to everybody. And we have actually, I think Waconia is a good example. We redid that, and that's close by. We redid that substation there, and you look at how closely the houses have come around up to the substation, and growth doesn't stop. And, you almost have to push back on how close the growth can be coming into the lines and stuff like that. So,
All right, thank you for answering that.
I don't know if I answered it. We're trying to come from a co-op perspective, a utility standpoint is what I was trying to do.
So I am just going to say this because I have to. So in our packet tonight, Great River Energy's own filing emphasizes this point, and it is in quotes, that this route that is picked, it avoids impacting land that the city of Victoria has already planned to host future commercial, industrial, and residential developments. That is no different than the city of Carver having this plan to host future commercial, industrial, residential, whatever it is. So we're venting up here, and we're obviously telling you that we are not pleased with this. Are we just banging our heads against the wall now for no reason? Is this a plan? Is this a done deal? And we're just getting this off our chest at this point? Or is there something that we can do to have this line not come right through that section of our annexation area?
Are you asking?
I'm asking anyone who might have an answer to that.
So where we're at in the route permit process, you guys provided comments during scoping, which was very beneficial. You also provided comments on the environmental analysis as to your preference for not having the proposed route as the permitted route, and that's how the process plays out. Now, the ALJ will issue a report on July 17th as to their findings in regards to what they recommend the PUC permits issues a route permit for.
Sorry, what did you say?
The administrative law judge
Yep.
that presided over the public hearings on July 17th will issue a report to the PUC with a recommendation as to if a route permit should be granted, and if so, which route should be permitted by the route permit. After that is issued, the PUC will hold a meeting in September, and they'll make a decision on the route permit. And at that time, they could permit whatever they want. They could permit any one of these alternatives. They could permit one that's not in the environmental analysis. They could push the decision out and make PUC go back and review additional information. So it's not a done deal is what I'm trying to tell you. And at the end of the day, the PUC is the final say on which route is going to get a permit. Just because we prepared a route permit application with our proposed alignment in there does not necessarily mean that that's going to be the permitted route.
All right, thank you for that.
I'm a little confused as to the timeline because I've heard you say both that the city of Carver provided information during scoping and that you didn't know that we had an annexation agreement until scoping. So I'm curious as to the timeline there, how both could be true, how we could have found out about it and provided you information and you not know that we had an annex agreement in that same time period.
So if you can, I don't know if you can go to the PUC timeline I provided. So we have submitted the application, comment period on completeness, and then public information and scoping. They held public meetings for the environmental scoping, so scoping for the environmental analysis. And at that meeting, a member of the public brought up the fact that the city of Carver had an annexation agreement with Dahlgren Township, and that's when we reached out to the city. And I believe the member of the public came in and spoke with the city as well at that time. So that's when we found out about it, was during
Erin, is
scope.
that correct? Did Great River reach out to us at that time?
So a resident from the township did come in. That was our first notification of it. And then I think one of us reached out to each other. I can't confirm which direction it went.
Okay. Thank you. I was under the understanding that we reached out first, but it's possible that that wasn't. That's a misapprehension on my part, and for that I apologize.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I was going to ask the next steps question, but I think you got to it with the answer to Christie's question. I know we're not happy, but I appreciate you guys coming in and talking through this with us. I wish we would have had this conversation years ago, but thank you very much for coming in. All right, this is the part of the evening where we are going to go into closed session to discuss, develop, and consider potential offers to purchase various permanent or temporary easements necessary for the Carver Levee reconstruction project. Oh, who's gonna read that motion?
Oh my goodness.
Christie's going to.
Okay,
I can do it.
do it.
I think we're gonna go into a different room, Todd, to do that. Oh, we're not? Oh, all right, let's go.
A motion to go into closed session pursuant to Minnesota statute section 13D.05 subdivision 3C to discuss, develop, and consider potential offers to purchase various permanent and temporary easements necessary for the Carver Levee reconstruction project over portions of Carver County PIDs 200500230, 200502250, 200500220, 200500210, 200500200, 200500180, 200500170, 200500130, 200500140, 200500470, 200500490, 200500480, 200500450, 200500990, 200500970, 200500980, 200500910, 200500100, 200500090, 200500705, 200500780, and 203500010.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Pasco and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thanks for taking that one, Kayla. All right. Okay, we are back in open session, so friendly remember, council members, turn on your microphones, please. And we are at the point where we are going to talk about, probably make a quick motion about the acquisition of real property interest. So I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 118-25 authorizing acquisition of real property interests.
Motion by Councilmember Pasco,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Pershman. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. On to communications. Anything from you guys? All right. Kelly, you want to go first?
I don't have anything this time.
All right. Christy.
The HPC for next week has been canceled.
All right. Lori?
I had the opportunity to attend the League of Minnesota conference. Just many good things came out of it. Insightful. There was a session where had me think of questions I wouldn't have thought of, such as what do we have for insurance for cybersecurity? And then the question got answered in the seminar. And also there was really just moving, or just like people were so open and vulnerable talking about within the city of Burnsville and their police department. February 2024 had an awful tragedy. And so they spoke about it. And there, for me, a big takeaway was, for any of us, you know, if we're in a crisis, who do we call? Who's our own, like, personal? Like, we talk about having an emergency management plan, but, you know, who do we call from our, you know, peer from, you know, maybe they're in the same position but at a different city or so. It was just really interesting how much they valued leaning on that. And, you know, so, you know, who can you call? It was a good takeaway. So yeah, it was just kind of fun to network with different cities, and it's either something that they're dealing with that we've already dealt with, or there's something that, oh, better watch out for that, or like what might come on a horizon. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks.
Just a quick follow-up to Councilmember Sayers. I did connect with I went to the same session and connected with the Burnsville city manager, and he shared their emergency operations plan, and it's a kind of that slimmed down version that we've been hoping to create. So I sent it out to the team, and we're gonna be trying to use that as theirs is quite a bit more detailed than I think ours needs to be, but kind of using that as a good template for developing action plans related to emergencies here in Carver.
I had an opportunity this morning to attend a session with Mayor Johnson at Carver Crossing and meet with a handful of residents there. I think it's a great thing that we have, you know, but there's a real effort to connect. And this has been a regular ongoing meeting with the residents in that community. I think it's a little harder for them maybe to come and see us. So we go and see them. I'll let the mayor talk a little bit more about that. But it was rewarding to hear the appreciation from those residents that the city takes the time to do that.
Thanks. Okay, updates for me, just going in chronological order, going back to June 18th. I think I'd given you guys the heads up about the Metropolitan Council's Committee of the Whole that was held in Chaska. So it was the first time that they took one of their meetings on the road, and they chose District 4 to do it for the first time. So it was great that they did that. I was on a panel discussion along with Billy Wormuskirchen of Bill's Toggery and Shakopee, and then Bill Rudnicki from the Shakopee, Minnewacan, Sioux community. And we talked about perspectives, working together, growth, kind of all of the things. So it was great to have the Met Council out in our community. Also, I made a beeline from there to the vehicle fair, which was up at Carver Station and was just absolutely packed. It was a really great night for it. Lots and lots and lots of young families. And I understand that the highlight of the evening was when the fire department got a call. All these little kids got to see the firefighters like pack up and zoom out of there. So, and then there was a line when they got back. So, really fun event. Let's see, we had on Friday, June 20th, we had a Business Alliance meeting. We continue to have a really strong turnout and valuable participation in that. On June 21st, Carver Ridge had their family fun fair. I volunteer at Carver Ridge, so it was a fun event, and I was volunteering there, but that was first day of summer. It was such a hot day, but they very smartly moved everything inside, including the llamas that they had in their front lobby.
Oh my gosh.
I will never not see llamas there whenever I walk into that building. And then I also went to the League of Minnesota Cities conference, and a lot of stuff, and I haven't even connected with you yet on my post-it note of things that you hear in passing of talking with other communities and like, should we do this? Are we doing this? Are we checking on that? I attended a session on the ADA compliance standards that we're going to need to have for our website. So that's something that's kind of bouncing around. The session from Burnsville was one that I got there early knowing it was going to be a packed room. It was a packed room. It was incredibly emotional. As you can imagine, like they had the fire chief, the police chief, the city manager, their city attorney, and their communicator. And I think it's no exaggeration that they all got emotional at one point during the conversation.
Be
And
glad I was
it's such a good thing, because I'm such a, whenever you cry, I cry. But like, the police chief was talking about how she was running to the hospital and she was getting condition reports on folks, and then she had to go back and talk to her folks that were there and all the other cops and firefighters that were there. And she said at one point, somebody said to her, like, Tom's here, he wants to talk to you. And she's like, she did something else. And then they're like, hey, Tom's still here and he's waiting for you. And then she went and did something else. And then finally they told her again, and she's like, who's Tom? And why does, and they're like, that's your husband, he's here. And she was just like so out of it. And, you know, like, and a lot of the stuff she's like, I don't remember how I got from, forgot what it was, but like from my house to the police station in the morning, and just talking about partnerships. And I think it was the Egan police chief who like came in and was her right hand person and just kind of like helping. And again, like just talking about that value of partnerships. But that was the one that was like, I felt bad because they were all incredibly emotional, but it was really, really insightful. Let's see, and then as Eric mentioned, we had coffee at Carver Crossing this morning. I visit there probably about once a year and trying to kind of crack that nut on resident engagement. We only had 3 people this morning, but we met at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. So just trying to, you know, people don't come to us. We have to go to where folks are, and just trying to figure out ways to best do that. Other updates, congratulations to, as Brent mentioned in our work session, our now former Fire Chief Callie Trimble on his retirement after 22 years. I hope he's sleeping in, sleeping well, and doing all the things that he can focus on and now on his life after the fire service. Also wanted to, at our last meeting, I told you guys that I had gotten an email from Comcast and talking about fiber installation. Turns out I need to walk those comments back. They are not installing fiber in the city of Carver, but what they're doing is they're making improvements to their existing system. So we talked with our government liaisons at the conference in Duluth, and they mentioned needs and accessibility and all the things that just make your Wi-Fi and internet work at your home, but without the digging. So I think it's kind of win-win. They emailed us about it, and if you guys are interested, let me know. We can share that email. But no fiber, which means no digging. And Kayla, I don't know to what extent you experienced this in your neighborhood, but it was a painful process when Metronet came in. So
Oh, yeah, my neighborhood got it too.
everybody's did. And then finally, just a thank you to Councilmember Pershman. I don't think he realized when he got assigned the Southwest Transit Commission how much of a time commitment it would be, and I know that he's really putting in some hours for that, so thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right, so with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
It's always like, do we want to be here all night?
I'll second.
Please. Motion by Councilmember Pershman, second by Councilmember Sayer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good evening.